Alright, glad you're back with us. This is Eric Owens and we're carving the sports bear. We left off on part number 3. This is where we're headed, although I probably shouldn't show the Tennessee one. They didn't do well in their bowl game the other day. Shame. So that's what we're looking for. And so video number 4, we're going to work on getting a lot more of these details, getting the bulk of the wood off that we need to get off, and get the details in there in terms of shaping the body, shaping the shoe, shaping the arms, the head, and whatever fingers we're going to put on there. Glad you could make it back with us. Let's pardon me while I scratch my nose. Let's move on to part number 4. Glad you're back with us. We left off here. We got part of the face done, we got part of the nose done, we got part of the arms done, part of everything done, but we don't have anything really done that we need to do right now. Let's see if that helps a little bit more. Take some of those shadows away. I've been trying to put my tools into a container like this because if I don't, they roll off the table a lot because I'm paying attention to what I'm grabbing, not what I already have. And so I found these little dish trays at Fred Meyer, a local chain of department stores we have around here, kind of like Walmart, whatever. But I know I'm going to start with a fishtail gouge, and so I've got a number 5 stew-by fishtail gouge. I know I'm going to have a big V tool, so I've got a number, whatever number that is, number 12 file, and I have a number 9 file, which is a, going the wrong way, which is a gouge, pretty good hefty size gouge. Here's a Drake wide V, and I think it's somewhere around 70 degrees. Here's a small Ramelson. It's a V tool that lets me get into the small stuff. I like that Ramelson. It's been with me for a long time. And here I have a number 39 from Stew-By. These are the ones I know I'm going to use. I have other spots over here that I can fill them up, but that just keeps them kind of corralled. The problem is I forget to use it. I forget to put them where they're supposed to go. So anyway, let's put our safety gear on and let's remember to ourselves that we're always going to be as safe as we can. I don't know of anybody who's hurt themselves seriously and does not wish they had not hurt themselves. Every person I know, from famous to not famous, that hurt themselves says, I just wished I'd have put that glove on one more time before I did that cut. All right, so I mean, we got a lot here to do in terms of getting where we want to go, but I know 2 things I want to do first. Well, I'll do 3. I want to round this head because that head's not very rounded. Starting there. I want to round the body and take off some of the bulk. You can see you got a lot of bulk under the arms. And I want to shape the snout because the snout is not where I want it to be. I'm trying to get there, but I'm not there yet. So let's see. Oh, I didn't mention the knife that I'll use. It kind of doesn't matter what knife I'm using. One of the ones that I go to a lot is my Pinewood Forge. This is the short, what they call a short Harley, and this is an OCC tool. They're out of business, but they've been bought out by KCT, and from what I hear, they're doing a really good job at doing some good tools. This is 1.5 inches. This one is, and that one's about 1.5 inches as well. So they're the ones that I go to a lot, but not always. And I hate to say I promote one knife over another. I really don't. I just carve with whatever I reach down there and grab. All right, fishtail gouge, because we want to spend some time kind of getting the size down on this head. I don't like a great big fat head because a bear's head it's kind of shapely toward the front where all the size is, all the features, ears, mouth, snout, whatever you want to call it. So I just recently sharpened my tools. I taught a class on today's Monday. I taught a class on Saturday. And it's always a question that comes about is how do you sharpen? And you have to go back to educating people because what you want them to understand is what's the difference between sharpening and honing. And that's a whole conversation. We could talk about that for 10 minutes, especially if you're using visuals and showing how to do it. We could certainly talk about that here. I don't want to spend a lot of time because it's covered in a lot of other videos that I've done, and it's covered in everybody else's videos. And so just take the time to understand what's the difference between honing and sharpening. Basically, one is just reshaping it, and one is just getting rid of the excess stuff that you've taken off when you carve, because these knives are very thin at the cutting edge, and because they're very thin, when you cut, it breaks off. And so what I'm doing is I'm going over here by the arm, and I'm just trying to get that shape of the head to shape like the rest of this is, because it's rounding this way and it's rounding this way. So I want to get that shape to where I have room around here by the arm to carve in that head. I've gotten some feedback on my videos. I always like feedback, and you know, even if it's negative feedback that I didn't do something right or whatever. I've had some people say I talk too much, and some people say I don't talk enough, and I just kind of take that with a grain of salt, because two different opinions doesn't give you data that you can use, especially if it's only one person saying that. So if it's 10 people saying you're talking too much and one saying you're not talking enough, then that's a different story. Anyway, I keep moving around. I don't. If you notice, I don't stay in one spot when I'm carving. I'm always moving around. It's mainly because of symmetry. What I don't want is to carve so much off one side that I can't carve that same amount off the other side, because I've got it out of shape. And so I'm just going to nibble away. And I realize for a beginner class, the beginner video, that makes it a little bit longer. But there's nothing wrong with taking more time. The idea is for you to get the product and the result you want. And so if it takes you a little bit longer than it does someone else, what difference does that make? I know a lot of people talk about how fast they carve or whatever, and wife and I did a show here a couple weekends ago on 20th and 21st cowboy show, so we had a lot of our cowboy stuff. But there are several questions that people ask, and number one is, how long does it take? And so, you know, you got to tell them. I've got a rule of thumb that roughly for every inch in height of a carving, it takes me about 2 hours to do that inch. So this guy right here, where's my tape measure? This fellow right here is somewhere around 6 inches. So if I sat down, you know, from start to finish and measured that out, he's 6 inches tall. It should take me about 12 hours. Now, I've done several of these, more than one or two. So you saw the ones I've got over here. You saw the ones I showed up with. I don't know that I'm trying to show off. Please, I misspoke there. I'm not showing off at all. I'm just showing you how I do things. And I'm glad some of you like that. But generally, that's the first question they ask. Well, okay. There's three main questions that they ask. They ask, what kind of wood is it? And so now you're educating them on what basswood is, because the vast majority of people have no idea what basswood is. Then you tell them it comes from the linden tree, and they go into confusion. And so it's an education process of telling them what it is and what you're using. That's one question. Second question is, how long does it take? So that general rule of thumb for me is roughly about every inch I got to go about 2 hours carving. That's a good number to follow. There's some things it takes less. If I do an ornament, it's 4 inches or whatever, 6 inches. It doesn't take me that long, but it's a general rule of thumb. And then they look at me and they see my wife sitting over there at the one edge of the booth, and they see me sitting at one edge. I usually try to sit up front of the booth when we do an art show or we do a craft show, whatever. Trying to get some shape down to that nose right there. I want to get that kind of, it narrows at the top and widens at the bottom. Anyway, they always look at, they'll see me, because I'll usually carve when I'm at a show. Because I want people to see it happening. I want them to know what they're getting into. And I want them to wander around for 4 or 5 hours and see that I've only done a little bit, because this is something that takes a while. It's not like pottery. I can throw it on the wheel and I can really bang out a pottery thing in an hour or so. This is 2 hours for every inch roughly. And so I want them to be able to see what I'm doing. But they always come up and they say, "Oh, that's a very good job." And you do the carving, right? I say, "I do," because we make a point of all of this is hand carved. It's all hand done. I put a machine to it to cut it out on the bandsaw, to shape it around, take some of the big bulk off of it that I want to carve. And then I put the rest of it on my tools. And then they look at my wife and say, "And you do the painting." And they don't ask, they say that as almost like a declaration. She goes, "Nope, he does it all." He does it all? Why does anybody assume that the woman, in my case my wife, does the painting? And so I asked one lady when she came in, and she was really aggressive about it. "And you do the painting, you do a good job of painting." And my wife points at me and says, "No, he does the painting." "What?" And I said, "Why do you automatically assume, why do people automatically assume that the lady in the arrangement, in the business, is doing the painting?" And one lady, she handed it and she says, "It's teamwork. You do one and she does the other." I said, "Then what do you call it when I do it all?" Well, I didn't make a sale to that lady. I think she stomped off a little bit miffed, which is okay. You know, not everybody has to agree. But I don't think she was happy that I called her out on, well, let's face it, it's sexist. I mean, it's sexist to think that no woman can do this, or women don't do this. I mean, I wish my wife would show her carving. She doesn't. She does a lot of geometric stuff, balls and cages, chains, Moravian star. If you don't know what that is, go look that up. But she does all of that stuff, and that's what she likes, because she doesn't see a face in a piece of wood. She said, "I could no more get a face out of there than I could get the man in the moon." But anyway, I just think it's interesting, because I want people to know that this hobby, this art form is still out there, and people are still doing it, and it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman. We're having fun, and we're making something out of wood. And so my wife isn't the only one that does this. I know lots of women, and some of them are very, very good. And for all my female cohorts out there, I like what you do, and I'm proud of what you do, and it's nice to see you all carve, just as it is to watch my fellow male compatriots too. Alright, we're trying to trim that head down. I want to get in between the arm and the head there. I didn't leave myself a lot of room. I should have carved out a little bit more. But anyway, I'm working and working and working. I'm just working around. And that nose is awful long. So I'm going to bring it down some. Let's grab another knife, and I'm just going to take off, I don't know, 1/8 inch, quarter inch off the front. A little shorter. I think I might have too much light over here. There, you see that nose a little shorter. I still want to go shorter, because I'm going to make it smaller, and I'm going to leave that nose poking out there just a little bit, because I want that to be the focal point of the front. And then I'm going to come up here and just carve at an angle to the snout. Gives you that sweep away. I'm going to change the mode on. I got a new light, and I like it, but I'm still learning how it works. And some of it is kind of very bright. I try to turn it down. It's got 4 settings on it. That looks a little more like what I'm looking for. Okay. Anyway, I like this light, but it's an adjustable experience, adjusting experience. I got to figure out where the light has to be, how far away it has to be from my subject, what color it's got to be. Right now I'm on more of a yellow color. Okay, I think I got that down about where I want it to be. I've got the arm over here. I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to piddle around. I'm going from one side to the other, and wherever I see something that needs to be done, which in this case there's a lot, I just stop and do it. Then move it and stop and do it. Move and stop and do it. But right now we're still in the let's get it down phase in terms of size. You can see how flat the back is. I needed to get that around. I'm still got a big head in the back of this, but now this more in proportion to the front, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. And we're going to come in here and separate that here in just a little bit. But remember, I've got this little dot in the middle, and I'm rounding away from that dot. That dot tells me the high point of that rounded object that I'm carving, which happens to be the head. And so I want to make sure I'm rounding down away from that. If you followed along with the first 3 videos, I want to apologize. I started 3, and then my professional business just kind of took off. We did a show right after I finished that 3rd one. We did a show thinking, okay, no big deal. It's the last show of the year. I'll get back to doing this. And then from that show, I got about 4 or 5 commissions, and just about every one of them wanted it fairly quickly. We did the show on the 20th and 21st of July, or December, and there were 2 of the commissions, 2 of the customers that wanted theirs, real soon. Whereas I was already working on one from November. They got a hold of me and said, I know it's close, but I would really like to have this by Christmas. And so we're still trying to make that get done. It's after Christmas. No big deal, but it's just a matter of being able to do it in a time frame. What I don't want to do is to rush through these things. People pay, a goodly sum of money. For some people, it's a lot of money. For some people, it's not it's no big deal. They come prepared to pay for art, and they're willing to pay whatever they want. They can afford whatever they want, and they're willing to pay it. But when let's say if this was the first one of these I was doing, and someone said, I want X, I want all this on there, I want this jersey, I want this shirt, I want these shoes, I want this foam finger, I want these numbers and put name on it, whatever. Well, I'm going to do at least 2 of them. I may do 3 before I'm finally pleased with it. I did Sam Elliott, and one of the things that I have to tell people this because I don't think they realize what's going on. Whenever you're looking at a face, a person talking, smiling, gesturing, looking around the room, their face is constantly in motion. And when you have 100 and something muscles or whatever there is on the face, those muscles are in complete motion all the time, and you don't ever really see the face stop moving. Even when they're not saying anything, not chewing, not whatever, their body the facial muscles are still moving. And then they say, I want a caricature of Tom Selleck. I'll use Santa Claus because that's what or not Santa Claus, I'll use Cowboys, that's what I do. And they'll say, I want this and this and this. And you realize once you stop that face, it looks a whole lot different than when it's in movement. So when it's in movement, people they see all kinds of expressions. They can tell when the guy's angry, happy, sad, contemplative, wistful. You pick the description there. And that means that person's going to see everything there in just a few seconds. Their face can go from euphoric to utter tragedy. And that's what happens with faces. Now you try to carve that, and you got to stop all of those motions, all of those muscles, and make them fit into what you're looking for, and make them be what you're looking for. If it's a sad cowboy, you don't want his eyes twinkling. He's going to look sad. If he's mad, he doesn't have a smile on his face. And if he does, and you're carving, that's a very complex thing to do. Because now you're saying, he's angry, but he's got a smile on his face. I remember when I was teaching during COVID, kids had masks on. It covered the bottom part of their face, and their eyes would crinkle, kind of wrinkle up. Okay? Underneath that mask, was that kid smiling? Was he grimacing? Was he upset? Kids would tell me, I never smile. My eyes just move. I don't smile with my bottom of my mouth because it's covered. And so you had to learn how to interpret that. What does that mean for carving people? It means you gotta understand that everything comes to a stop. And when you look at that, it doesn't look like it does when it's in motion. And there's people that they'll stand there and look at it and go, doesn't really look like Sam Elliott. I'm going, you put him on the shelf, put him on the mantle, take him home and look at him for a week or 2. If you don't like it after a week or 2, you really don't like it. I've got enough cowboys. I'll swap you out one. I'll bring over 4 or 5 and you pick one. And you be where you want to be. But I've found that for the most part, once they start looking at it, they start to see the little things that make it Sam Elliott, and they start to ignore the things that don't make it Sam Elliott. And It's that educational process. I mean, we're not doing realistic sculpture here. If I was, I'd be doing a whole different medium. It's a whole different way of doing things when you're doing it to be realistic as opposed to doing it to be caricature. There's a difference there. And so we've got to take that into consideration when we request, you know, something like, for instance, Santa Claus. If I take 100 carvers, whether they're experienced or not, and say, let's do a Santa Claus, you know the answer to this question before I even ask it. Do they all look the same? And the answer is heck no. No, they don't. There's just no way that you can do that. Now, I've done a few carvings where it looks similar to another one. I did a carving one time for Brian down at Provo. He runs Treeline USA. And I didn't do it for him. I did it for a show. There's 3 or 4 of us that went down to the Utah Valley Woodcarvers Club, and they did their show in September. We went down there, and my guy won Best of Caricature. And I got a call at the motel that night, and the guy says, my name is Brian, I'm the owner of Treeline, and I really want to buy that carving. Well, that's the biggest carving I had done to that date that I wasn't going to keep. There's some there's some that I did that I kept. That was the biggest one I'd ever done. It stood about 13, 14 inches tall. If you're down at Provo, down at Utah, and you see that, he's got it on display in his display case. And he also put it on their catalog for that year as well. Anyway, it's two Civil War soldiers, shoulder to shoulder. One's right shoulder is on the other, and one's left shoulder is touching the other one's right shoulder. And I made them to where they looked enough like brothers, but one was in a gray uniform and one was in a blue uniform. I love that carving. I hated to part with it, but you know, I'd spent a lot of money to go down there, and it's nice to make a little bit of it back. You can make a sale or two. At that time, I wasn't selling a lot of carving. This was 2021 or 2022. Anyway, bottom line is I'm getting away from my story. Bottom line is I made the guys look alike. I tried to make them look alike. And I think I did a pretty good job, because that's what everybody says, oh my God, they look like brothers. Well, that was the point. It was called Family Feud because one was on the south side and one was on the north side. I love that carving. I need to redo it again, just because I really like the carving. I don't do a lot of Civil War stuff because I don't want to get into the argument about this or that. For the same reason I don't do a lot of carvings of cowboys that are drunk or smoking, or I don't do a lot of carvings of people smoking marijuana or whatever. I want it to be a wholesome character, and it may be goofy, and it may look like, okay, not exactly what we want it to look like, but I'm trying to have fun while I'm doing it, and I hope people see the humor in it. But there's just a few things I want to stay away from. Anyway, I did those, and when I look back at them now, I'm thinking, boy, those guys really look a lot alike. Some of the folks that teach, and they're on the teaching circuit around the country, Pat Moore, Rich Weatherby, the caricature kind. Those folks can make 2 carvings look almost exactly the same. And I stand in awe of that when I see it, because I can't do it. And I guess maybe I don't want to, I don't know, but I know that I like doing individual carvings. And when I do a show, what I hear from people is their expressions are all different. And that's one of the things I want to hear. What I don't want to hear is they look like they're cookie cutter, they look like they're plastic or resin, and they look like they were turned out on a Chinese manufacturing line. I don't want that. I don't think that's what you're coming to a show to buy. Okay, we're getting that face down where we need to go. Still adjusting lines. I swear I don't ever get it 100% right. Okay. We're still chasing the roundness on this body, because I don't have it as round as I want it, but I'm taking off a little bit on every pass. Every time I go around, taking off a little bit, rounded that a little bit, we'll round this a little bit, up to that arm, up to that bottom of the shoulder. But this is just hogging away at it. This is the heavy part of this, and I think I may sell some of these. I want to make them shorter. I'd make them about 4 or 5 inches, but 6 inches can be a little bit. If you're wanting to hurry or you want to get to the details of it, 6 inches is a lot of stuff. I was doing a class the other day of a subject. I won't tell you what it was, but I did it, and I thought, okay, I'll do it in this size. I did it in that size. It took me forever just to get the example done, and I realized, okay, I got to dial that down for beginners, because a lot of these beginners that I do in my class, they come in and they've never held a knife like this before. They never made a stop cut. They don't know what a push cut is, and they don't know what a paring cut is or a thumb cut. So you've got to teach them that, and in the teaching process, you don't want to discourage them. You want to make sure that they walk away having a good time, and sometimes that means you got to do a simple project that they can finish in 3 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever it is. So I'm trying to get to where my students come in and they can finish the carving in fairly short period of time, or at least get started on all the aspects of it. They may not finish. Say if we were doing a flower you hang on the refrigerator magnet kind of thing. They may not get all the petals done, but they've got enough petals done to know what it looks like. And then they go home and they finish the rest of it. Now, they may not have tools, and that's why we have our wood carving club on Thursday that has tools we can loan out for the evening, and that way people can show up with nothing but what they want to work on. And if they don't have anything to work on, just want to learn how to carve, well, we've got, I know I personally carry around one of those household tubs that you store things in, and it has nearly 30 projects in that we can get started on. So everybody has an opportunity to get started on something simple. Learn the cuts, learn the safety, learn the hardening or the honings, and getting it where it needs to go. Okay, I'm going to come across that top. I'm not deep enough in terms of where I want to put the eye socket, so I'm going to come across with my big gouge. And those eyes are going to be right there. And then we'll drop down the snout just a little bit more. Okay, so this is on the end grain, because the grain runs this way. Here's the top of the nose, and so we're on end grain. It's hard to carve. Be careful. Make sure you have your safety gear on, because it has a tendency to go a little bit and then jump out of the wood because you're adding more and more pressure, and all of a sudden the knife gets out of the wood on you. So you got to be careful of that. Make sure you know exactly what's in front of the wood. You know where it's going. Always try to teach 2 things when you're carving. You got to know 2 things. You got to know where it's at, and you got to know where it's going. If you're not sure of either one of those, stop for a minute, take a few seconds to figure out, okay, is this going to go straight into my finger? Is it going to go straight into the pad of my hand? Is it going to go straight into a piece of wood that I want to keep? Make sure you know where you're going. You don't want to end up having trouble. Hopefully you're watching as I go around, because I just went from the arm and now I'm up at the head and I'm doing the ears. And I'm going to bring down that part of the head right there. So we're going to, again, cross grain here. It's going to want to jump at you. See, every time I crash into that ear with the arm, with the knife, I make another cut there. So I got to be careful. A lot of times you can put a stop cut in there, and that'll prevent a lot of it from happening. So it comes out cleaner that way. So just the little things you got to know about how to do this in terms of making it work for you. You got to make sure that you know where you're going. Otherwise, it can be very frustrating. I mean, wood carving is a removal process, and so you're either removing it or you're not. And if you're not removing it, then you're not getting where you want to go. And if you are removing it, you want to make sure you get the wood out of there that you need out of there. If you understand what I'm saying. If not, take a minute to think about that. You want to know where you're going. You want to know what you're doing. If not, you're like me, you end up with a bucket of stuff in the garage that looks like crap and you don't ever bring it out. Although I do have a video of it if you want to go look at it. I think it's called Persistence and Perseverance. I'm not real sure. Can't remember what it is. I don't drag it out very much. We haven't worked on the feet at all. Let's work on slimming those feet down, because that's going to determine what I do with the body. So I'm starting in the front, and I'm carving to the leg, and I'm trying to just scoop it out so I'll make them look like tennis shoes, or sneakers as the kids call them. They don't call them tennis shoes anymore because not many of them use those shoes to play tennis. I go, why would I call it tennis shoe if I don't play tennis? I'm like, don't smart talk your elders here, child. But anyway, kids call them sneakers, and so no big deal. We're gonna shape a little bit of these sneakers here, and I'm going right. I'm at the back of the there, and I'm carving out between the legs, giving some empty space in there. At the same time, I can then come in here on the side. I'm just going to carve straight up. I'm trying to thin these shoes down because they're very thick from here to here, and they stick out quite a bit. And then I've got to come up here and I've got to undercut the jersey and the shoes. Okay, and I've got to come in here and do that to the same on the inside. So whatever cut I make out here to make it match, I got to make it in here. Not the easiest thing to do because it's hard to get down in there, and you have to flip it up upside down and sideways to see it. But that's what we're doing. We're gonna take down the size of the shoe, and having an oversized shoe, not a big deal. It's not a big deal in this case. We're gonna make him look like he's wearing Cons, sorta. We might even figure out how to do the little symbol of Converse in there. But anyway, most of the shoes that I do, they go down and come back up where the toe is. So that means I got to go start right behind the toe, go in, and come back out the back of the shoe, or towards the shoe where it matches the jersey. Narrow the toe down a little bit. I'll come from the back to the front and decide at this point here what kind of an insole you're going to have. You're going to have a rounded insole, or does it not matter? I don't know that anybody's going to look at your carving and say, I don't want it because it doesn't have an insole. It's not going to happen. Not unless you get an ultra picky buyer, and sometimes they're very demanding. I had a guy tell me here back in the summer, I had some cowboys, and I've done some on grass. I do some on boardwalk, like, you know, on hardwood boards. And he oohed and awed over this cowboy I had, and I was asking a pretty penny for it because it was pretty good. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, if you had him standing on grass instead of a wooden board, I'd have bought it. And a little bit later, another guy came up and looked at another one of my cowboys, and he started talking about how big of a Clint Eastwood fan he was. His dad went to high school with him and all that. Good little story. I enjoyed hearing it. I always like to hear people's stories. You just never know where they're going to go sometimes. Anyway, he says, I won't buy a cowboy until you make one look like Clint Eastwood. Alright. One of the problems with taking a commission like that is the commissioner, like the one doing the commissioning, can be very, very, very particular about what they want, which means in the long run, nothing wrong about that, but in the long run, it's hard to please them. And so sometimes they'll find just one little thing that's different, and then they don't want it. And I'll bet you that if I did some Clint Eastwoods, they may not sell. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, why don't you do women? Well, I did 3 women cowgirls, and they didn't sell. I did 3 women golfers because they said, you bring some women golfers, we'll buy them. And I did a show near a golf course community one time. And you know what? You know it before I say it. Those 3 women golfers are still in my inventory. So sometimes when people say stuff like that, they're really not sure what they want. They're really not sure what it should look like. And that's just the way it is. People have to make a commitment to buying something and putting the money down. And then you have to commit where you're going to put it. I do a lot of carving where a lot of shows we have you know, a certain number of elderly people, and a lot of them are like, I love your stuff, I'd love to have some of it, but I'm, you know, 75, 85, 95, whatever. I don't need more stuff. I don't need more stuff to dust. And I think about that. I'm going, well, I'm headed toward that age. I'm getting there. I'm not there yet. But for me, I don't need stuff. I love looking at art. So I haven't given you a tour of my shop here or my house. My wife and I love art. And when we see it, says if we like it and we can afford it, we certainly can't afford everything, we buy it because we like looking at it. We're big time, we love being up in the mountains, so we do a lot of paintings. We buy a lot of paintings of mountains because in a year like this year where we were very, very smoky, very, very hot. We went weeks where it was over 100 degrees. I can't get up in the mountains. I just can't. I can't do that. The heat's gonna make us not feel good. So I have the pictures here, the photographs or whatever, paintings of the mountains, so I can see it, and it's a pleasure to us to do that. So today we've just kind of piddled around, not focusing on one particular thing. So when you work between now and the next section of this video series, we'll be at number 5. I'm hoping to get all the carving done in number 5, but the way I'm piddling around with this, I don't know that I will. Anyway, I hope you stay committed to watching it throughout the series. I know I've got at least 3 more, because we've got at least the carving, then we have the painting and finishing, and then we have the mounting. So we're at the point where we've shaped the face and the ears a little bit more. We got a little bit more of each one of those to take out. We've done the back of the head. We've done this shoulder and part of this arm. We're working on the shoes. We have left this arm alone for the most part, and we worked a little on the back. So we're gonna end right now for this one. I'll put it in the computer and make some editing changes or whatever needs to be done, if any. And then we'll come back with video number 5. This one's 4. We'll come back with video number 5 in the next series. The next one we dial into. So good talking to you. God bless y'all, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.